Well, I just put myself in your company. You know, I love people. She is a legendary figure of Motown, a voice that carries the soul of America. As someone who once moved millions of hearts with every heartfelt note. Yet behind the prestigious title of the Empress of Soul lies a life marked by silent endurance, years filled with loss and loneliness that were never fully told what happened that caused the dazzling spotlight to fade, making way for turning points carved in tears. And how did this woman quietly rise again, transforming every wound into a living legacy the world could never forget? Join Celebs Rewind on a heartfelt journey through the life of Gladys Knight, where every note she sang became a testament to unshakable strength and love that never fades. I talk to Jim. Jim Weatherly wrote this song. Most of my hits. You May Gladys Maria Knight was born on May 28, 1944 in Atlanta, into a loving and disciplined African-American family. Her father was a dedicated postal worker, her mother a devoted nurse. But more than anything, their modest home was always filled with the sound of music, church hymns echoing in the evenings, voices rising softly from the radio, and spirituals that carried both faith and hope. At just 4 years old, Gladys began singing in the choir at Mount Moriah Baptist Church, where her tiny voice filled with surprising power and emotion would leave grown UPS in awe. By age 7, she had already graced national television, winning the original Amateur Hour, with a poise and presence far beyond her years, as if she had been born to sing for the world. But the most defining moment of her early years came not on a grand stage, but in the warmth of a simple family gathering. During her brother Bubba's 10th birthday party, the record player suddenly stopped working. In the middle of the celebration in that moment, Gladys, Bubba, her sister Brenda, and their cousins William and Elena Guest stood up and began singing to keep the party alive. It was spontaneous, it was heartfelt, and it was magical. Their impromptu harmonies silenced the room and moved every guest. From that singular moment, a new idea was born. They would become a group, a family ensemble, named the Pips, in honor of their cousin, James, Pip Woods, a name that would later echo through music history from that day on. Under their mother's gentle yet determined guidance, those 5 children practiced every single day in the living room, on the porch. Even in the sunlit backyard, they learned to blend harmonies, perfect, stage movements, and deliver emotion even before they truly understood the meaning behind every lyric. What began as playful singing soon became disciplined training. Their first performances were at churches, local talent shows, and small community events around Atlanta, where they quickly gained attention and admiration for their natural synergy and undeniable charm. In 1957, still in their early teens, the group signed their first recording deal with Brunswick Records. Although their initial releases didn't become major hits, these experiences became a stepping stone, one that would place them alongside R&B legends like Jackie Wilson and Sam Cooke as opening acts. Sharing stages with icons taught them invaluable lessons in professionalism, showmanship, and the soul of performance. Meanwhile, Gladys continued her education, attending Booker T. Washington High School and later graduating from Archer High School. Throughout these formative years, she balanced academics with rehearsals, radio appearances, and church obligations, gradually shaping not only her voice, but also her character, resilient, humble, and deeply grounded in faith and family. Beneath the warm southern skies of Georgia, where cicadas hummed and gospel music filled the air. Young Gladys Knight was growing not just as a child, but as a spirit destined to inspire hers. Wasn't simply a childhood, it was the quiet beginning of a legend. And the only thing that disturbed me just a little bit. Because as you know, from small church stages in the heart of Atlanta to the dazzling lights of international music halls, the artistic journey of Gladys Knight is a story of resilience, evolution, and lasting emotional power. What began as a simple family tradition gradually transformed into a legendary career one that helped shape the very soul of American R&B for generations to come. In the late 1950s, Gladys and her family group, the Pips, stepped into the professional music world with youthful sincerity and a quiet, captivating energy in her voice, a voice that already hinted at something extraordinary. Waiting ahead, their breakthrough came with the song "Every Beat of My Heart," which began climbing the charts and opened new doors for the group. It was followed by "Letter Full of Tears," a track that further showcased the emotional harmony between them. These early successes brought not only public attention, but also gave them the momentum and confidence to reach even higher, eventually leading them to move to New York, the artistic capital, where their ambitions would begin to take flight in 1966. The group signed with the legendary Motown label, joining a roster of some of the most iconic names in music history. Although they were not always spotlighted as prominently as others, Gladys, Knight, and the Pips stood out with deeply emotional songs like "I Heard It Through the Grapevine," and "If I Were Your Woman." Their sound was both raw and polished tender, yet commanding. They quietly carved their own lane and remained steadfast in their message and musical identity, seeking greater creative freedom. In the early 1970s, the group transitioned to Buddha Records, a pivotal move that would lead them into the most celebrated era of their career. In 1973, they released Midnight, Train to Georgia, a song that didn't just top the Billboard charts and win a Grammy, but also became an anthem for love sacrifice and devotion. It wasn't just a hit, it was a hymn for the dreamers, the faithful, and those who endure in silence. That success marked the beginning of a golden era, with follow-up hits like "I've Got to Use My Imagination," "The Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me," and On, which reached audiences far and wide in 1974. Their collaboration with legendary producer Curtis Mayfield on the Claudine soundtrack proved their ability to blend social consciousness with musical grace, creating songs that moved both the heart and the mind. As the 1980s approached, the music industry shifted, and individual paths began to emerge. During a brief period of separate activities, Gladys found the opportunity to explore her voice. As a solo artist more deeply, the group later reunited, releasing albums such as About Love and Touch, with memorable tracks like Landlord and Save the Overtime for Me, reminding the world that their harmony and elegance remained intact across the years. In 1987, a new chapter began after one final tour that was both a farewell and a celebration. The Pips gracefully stepped away from the spotlight, and Gladys Knight continued her solo journey with strength, maturity, and heartfelt expression. It wasn't a reinvention, it was a continuation, a natural evolution of her voice and spirit that had already touched so many lives. In the years that followed, the recognition continued not only for musical achievements, but for her lasting cultural impact. Gladys Knight and the Pips were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1996, and the Vocal Group Hall of Fame in 2001. Gladys herself was honored with the National Medal of Arts and the prestigious Kennedy Center Honors, solidifying her place as one of the most beloved voices in American history. Her musical journey was never only about success, it was about truth soul and a sacred connection between artist and audience, from Motown to Buddha, from group harmonies to solo strength. The voice of Gladys Knight became more than a melody. It became memory, legacy and spirit, forever etched in the hearts of those who listened. No one could have imagined that behind such a glorious musical icon was a life torn apart by wounds that never truly healed. Gladys Knight, the woman who brought millions to tears with her heavenly voice, had to silently endure the relentless storms that life hurled at her without warning and without mercy. She wasn't broken by one single event, but slowly shattered by an unending chain of sorrows, one wave after another crashing upon her soul. Quiet, persistent, and invisible to the world, each cut didn't bleed, yet left scars that bled within, scars only. She could carry, endure, and continue walking within silence at just 16, while her friends were still dreaming of prom nights and first dances. Gladys Knight entered a fragile marriage with her high school sweetheart musician James Newman. What seemed like an early blessing turned into the opening act of her darkest years. She became a mother far too young, and learned quickly what it meant to stand alone against a man who was slowly spiraling into self-destruction late at night while her baby slept. Gladys wiped away silent tears and swallowed the heaviness inside, because the next day she still had to smile beneath the spotlight. She once lost a child before ever hearing its first cry, a pain that tore a piece of her soul apart. The marriage lasted 12 long years, not out of happiness, but out of endurance. She had grown too accustomed to suffering in silence. When she left, it wasn't a farewell. It was an escape from a room that no longer had light. James Newman, her first husband and the father of her children, passed away just a few years later, consumed by the shadows of his own undoing. That ending cut like a cold blade through the dreams of her youth, leaving her with a heart marked by permanent sorrow, and with children too young to understand why their mother always seemed to weep in the quiet of night. In 1974, she remarried music producer Barry Hankerson together. They had a son, Sean G.A., a flicker of hope she thought might soften the weight of her past. But fate once again tightened its grip around her. One day, Shan G.A., her little boy, disappeared without a trace. The news struck like a hammer to her chest. Authorities labeled it missing, but to Gladys it was living through hell. Her greatest fear now. Real, losing a living child. She spent over $1 million searching for him, chasing every fragile hope, only to be met with a haunting silence. In the end, it wasn't just her son pulled from her arms, a part of her soul. The most tender and loving part was taken with him, and never truly returned. In 1995, she entered a third marriage, this time with motivational speaker Les Brown, but after only 2 years, it ended again in quiet heartbreak, 3 attempts at love, 3 falls into the same cold emptiness of an unlit room. Since 1978, amidst these heartbreaks, Gladys chose to settle in Las Vegas, close to her mother and 2 children, clinging to the final threads of warmth that family still offered her in the harshest of seasons. Loneliness didn't crash down like a storm. It was a familiar shadow that patiently waited behind the stage lights. It wasn't a sad love song or a broken marriage that nearly took her soul. It was a game of chance named gambling in the late 1980s. One night at a baccarat table cost her over 660 euro, but what she truly lost couldn't be counted in dollars. No one saw Gladys Knight collapse quietly into her hotel room after the applause. No one heard her whisper in the darkness, "Who am I when the lights go out?" Her decision to seek help at Gamblers Anonymous wasn't a choice. It was a lifeline. It marked the beginning of stitching together a soul torn by too many silent nights, one fragile thread of hope at a time. What pain is greater than a mother burying the child she once held in? Her arms, as she was still reeling from the trauma of nearly losing Shanga Fate, delivered a blow even more unforgiving. Her first-born son, Jimmy Newman III, passed away suddenly. At 36 from heart failure, it was the cruelest cut of all this time. There was no hope, no search, no miracle, only a cold, eternal void. One even music could not fill from that moment on. Gladys Knight kept singing, but no longer to conquer the stage. She sang to hold on, to reach for the shadow of the sun who had slipped away forever. Each note she uttered was a quiet dialogue with memory, a way to defy forgetting and keep her son alive within her heart. On some nights she would sit alone in the dark, silently reliving that final hug from Jimmy, a hurried embrace before his flight. That silent gaze, she now understood, had been his unspoken goodbye in every melody. Her soul whispered, "I'm still here, Jimmy. I'm still singing for you, just like when you were a little boy, and just when it seemed all the pain had quieted." Life struck once more breast cancer in its early stage. For many, that diagnosis might mark the beginning of despair, but for Gladys Knight it marked the moment she stood tall. Not with fanfare, but with the calm resolve of a soul shaped by storms. She spoke of her battle not to gain sympathy, but to remind others, even when the body breaks a heart that once knew how to sing, can still rise and carry on through it all. From 16 to beyond 70, no one ever heard Gladys Knight scream or curse her fate. She simply stood, wiped her tears, and kept singing. Perhaps music became the only place where she could store the wounds no one else could see. And perhaps in the end, faith was all that remained her final anchor. In an ocean of loss, she found solace in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, not because she had lost her old beliefs, but because her soul needed a resting place. Gladys Knight did not live a life of ease. She lived a life torn and patched, sewn together with perseverance, courage, and a heart that never stopped hoping. This was a woman who had stood countless times beneath dazzling lights, yet her heart often felt as cold and empty as a hospital hallway at midnight. And then, when she no longer expected anything from love, she met William Billy McDowell, a man who did not come to rewrite her story, but simply to walk quietly beside her through the rest of it. There were no grand vows, no spotlight moments, only the quiet presence of someone who chose to stay. Perhaps that, too, is a kind of love not loud but lasting, and that is what made her truly remarkable, not only through music but through the way she lived and came in. But she wanted the lounge where we were after years of tears and heartbreaks, where tragedies seemed to follow one after another. Gladys Knight did not fall. She did not fade into silence, nor did she quietly retreat from the stage. Instead, she rose with whatever remained her music. Her faith, and a quiet but unwavering love from the man who stood by her side in her final chapter. Billy McDowell was not only her anchor, but the door to a new chapter 1, no longer filled with pain, but rich with peace service and shared purpose. Since the early 1990s, Gladys Knight has continued to affirm her place in the world as a solo artist. Albums like Good Woman, Just for You, and At Last were not only critically acclaimed, but earned Grammy nominations and wins. But her success has never been about awards or chart rankings. It's about continuing to touch hearts with a voice shaped by both pain and grace. Beyond music, she's been a beacon of compassion and service. She has been actively involved in numerous charitable causes for education children and those in need, together with her husband, Billy. She founded the Reynolds Community Center Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to transforming a former school building in North Carolina into a community hub. It became more than a mission. It became her way of giving back to the next generation, to children who, like she once did, needed a place to begin. Again, she once said, "I don't sing just to entertain. I sing to heal, and if someone finds a bit of peace in my voice, then all my life's losses have meaning." That quote isn't just a reflection of her artistry. It is the essence of her soul. Gladys Knight is not just a singer. She is a vessel of healing and inspiration as time passed, and the music world evolved the image of Gladys Knight. Strong, gentle, dignified, remained deeply rooted in the hearts of millions. She is living proof that while pain may wear down the body, it can never extinguish the light of a heart that chooses to love and give over. The course of her career, she has been honored with more than 7 Grammy Awards, the National Medal of Arts, the Kennedy Center Honors, and has been inducted into both the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Vocal Group Hall of Fame. But for Gladys, the greatest reward has never been about accolades. It's about the power of music to heal, to uplift and to leave behind a legacy that transcends time. Though she has carried titles such as Empress of Soul, Voice of a Generation, and Motown Icon. What truly endears her to audiences is not just her talent, but her humanity. A woman who, despite many falls, always found a way to rise, to keep walking, and to never lose her tenderness in the face of life's harshest storms. Beyond music and community work, what brings her the greatest happiness is family. Although she did not have more children with her current husband, Gladys Knight now lives embraced by a large and loving extended family, with children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren often gathered close family meals, quiet afternoons, on the porch of their countryside home in North Carolina. These are the simple, yet priceless moments she once longed for through a stormy life. For Gladys Knight, this has become her final stage 1, where she no longer needs to sing to touch hearts, because the hearts that matter most are already beside her. And even on the rare stages where she still appears, there's no shortage of images showing her family standing proudly beside her, singing, smiling, and lighting up moments filled with warmth and pride. Her family has become the final choir in her musical journey, a chorus of love where there are no more tears, only laughter, embraces, and the quiet fullness of a life that has finally found peace after too many years of storms. You ain't have to go there. You ain't have to go there. You know, that was not one of my favorite songs. Come on now. From the quietest nights to the grandest stages, Gladys Knight walked a long journey through storms and light. She was not only a symbol of a golden era in music, but a living testament to the extraordinary power of resilience, grace, and a heart that knew how to rise after every fall. Every note she sang was more than performance. It was a whisper to life itself, that even in pain one can still sing, still live beautifully, and still inspire others with over 7 decades of dedication. Gladys Knight accomplished what few ever could, touching the hearts of generations with sincerity and humanity. She never stopped inspiring, not only through her music, but through the way she overcame loss, illness, and deep, silent loneliness. Even at the peak of fame, she chose to stay close to her family, kept singing for the community, and appeared with a gentle smile and a grateful soul among the spotlight of honors, like the Kennedy Center, the National Medal of Arts, and the applause of millions. The most radiant image remains that of a courageous woman, one who fell deeply, but always rose again with love in her hands. She is a monument that never fell silent, a woman who turned wounds into melody, sorrow into light, and her life into a song that will never fade. If her music ever moved your heart, please leave a word of gratitude beneath this video for the woman who sang with pain, with strength, and with unmatched grace. When the last spotlight slowly fades, most people remember the applause. But with Gladys Knight, what remains is not the sound of clapping, but the hearts she healed with her voice. A voice born from a heart that once broke, once lost, but never stopped singing to love, to forgive, to carry on. She didn't choose to become a legend. She simply lived fully through music, and that is what made her eternal now. As her life grows quiet, that final song will continue to echo in memories, in gratitude, and in the melodies that will never fall silent.